The FBI have uncovered a plot to kidnap an Iranian journalist, an Iranian-American journalist in Brooklyn. Oh boy. Let's take a look.
The FBI says it was no movie plot, a secret 2-year effort by Iran to keep close tabs on this woman, Masih Alinejad, at her house in Brooklyn with the goal of kidnapping her.
I'm an Iranian journalist, activist, but to be honest, the government in Iran have different names for me.
She's an outspoken critic of the Iranian regime's human rights record, especially its treatment of women, an author with a big profile on social media. Federal prosecutors say these 4 men in Iran, operatives of its intelligence service, hatched a plot to snatch her off the street, hiring private investigators to watch and photograph her house, falsely telling them she owed money to a client in the Middle East. The FBI says it found this screenshot showing that one of the Iranian men even researched ways to spirit her away by boat. U.S. authorities were so concerned they moved her to safe houses for 8 months. A 5th person, a woman in California, is charged with helping move nearly $500,000 here from Iran to finance the plot. Iran's foreign ministry tonight calls the charges baseless and ridiculous, but the Justice Department says Iran has a history of dragging dissidents back home to be jailed or executed.
Really? Just Iran? Just Iran? So let's take a look, man. This is from the DOJ. Look what they say here. As part of the kidnapping plot, the Farahani-led intelligence network also researched methods of transporting victim 1 out of the United States for rendition to Iran. They got stones to talk about rendition? Really? Sadeghi, for example, researched a service offering military-style speedboats for self-operating maritime evacuation out of New York City and maritime travel from New York to Venezuela, a country whose de facto government has friendly relations with Iran. Khazain researched travel routes from Victim 1's residence to a waterfront neighborhood in Brooklyn, the location of Victim 1's residence relative to Venezuela, and the location of Victim 1's residence relative to Tehran. Oh, what? He was going to speedboat her from Brooklyn to Iran? Really? That's what they're saying. Victim 1's residence is Brooklyn. I mean, just the one to Venezuela is ridiculous enough. That is ridiculous enough on its own. Look at what Rania had to say, right? So she had to say over here that Brooklyn to Venezuela is about 2,000 miles. The speedboat would have run out of fuel after several hundred miles and would have needed to store extra fuel, which would be difficult given the passengers, military experts tell me. I mean, just look at this on Google Maps, right? Which is apparently what these kidnappers did. They went on Google Maps and they looked up the route. So I'm looking it up for you. There you go. It's correct. It's about 2,000 miles. Who believes this nonsense? And it's incredible because this journalist, her name is Masih Alinejad, okay? She's gone on virtually every single network, like CNN, you name it, man. It's ridiculous. If you look this up on, she's been everywhere. Look, Reuters, ABC, CBC, NBC, Good Morning America, Al Jazeera. This is all in the last day. And she posted a video on Twitter. Look at this. She says, "I'm grateful to the FBI for foiling the Islamic Republic of Iran's intelligence ministry's plot to kidnap me. This plot was orchestrated under Rouhani. This is the regime that kidnapped and executed Ruh al-Azam. They've also kidnapped and jailed Yamshid Sharmat and many others."
California, live in Sweden. That's the nature of the Islamic Republic. And I want to actually ask all the leaders of the free world to understand that do not abandon Iranian people.
You have said that you are not just fighting for yourself. You just said a moment ago that you're not going to stop fighting. What would be the best possible outcome here?
I want to meet with President Biden. Look, I'm an American citizen. What is shocking here, that they did that in New York. That actually shows you that my brutal government actually challenging the U.S. authorities. And actually, it says you that the time when my government were trying to kidnap me here in America, the U.S. government was trying to deal with this government. And today they call this law enforcement. That breaks my heart.
Wow. So she's offended about Iran challenging the U.S. government in the U.S. Really? Remind me real quick, who orchestrated a coup in Iran in 1953? Heaven pray that it was in the United States and the UK, was it? No? Who's been kidnapping people in Europe? Who kidnapped Khalid al-Masri in 2004 in Macedonia and took him to Afghanistan and raped him and tortured him? Who's been kidnapping all these people? Who are these agents who run around Europe and the rest of the world kidnapping innocent men and raping and torturing them and sending them to Guantanamo Bay? That's Iran? Really? Because that we have concrete proof. We have evidence that that's real. This I have no clue. Now, don't get me wrong. If this by some coincidence or some chance is real, I mean, I feel very sorry for her. I don't think anyone should be harassed. Maybe someone else is harassing her. Maybe the FBI fed her a bunch of BS. I have no clue. Obviously, no one should be subjected to that. I just have a very difficult time believing this story because they say, in addition to the speedboat, look what they say over here. This from the Department of Justice, right? They say that this woman who's been arrested, so she's the only one who has actually been arrested. She's in California, right? While she is not charged with participating in the kidnapping conspiracy, she is alleged to have provided financial services that supported the plot and is charged with conspiring to violate sanctions against Iran, commit bank and wire fraud, and commit money laundering. She's also charged with structuring cash deposits totaling more than approximately $445,000. So you're telling me that Iran is under sanctions, but somehow they have the ability to move $500,000 for some journalist? $500,000. I mean, if they can do that for just a journalist, then are they really under sanctions? If they have all this knowledge and know-how and personnel and contacts and ways to circumvent this targeting of their banking and oil sectors and their economy? They have so many dollars at their disposal. They have so many ways to move money inside the United States. This is incredible. Iran must be the first nation to to circumvent sanctions to such a degree. This is incredible. And the thing that they do with $500,000 is it's not trying to buy useful parts or some kind of machines used for medical equipment, something to benefit their infrastructure. No. Let's kidnap a journalist in Brooklyn. This reminds me of this story over here. Do you remember last year? It's not even a full year ago. It's not even a full year yet. So a few months ago, do you remember this story in Politico? Quote, officials say Iran weighing plot to kill U.S. ambassador to South Africa. The Islamic Republic is still looking to avenge the death of Qasem Soleimani. Okay, so let me break down to you what a pile of manure this story is. The U.S. ambassador to South Africa is this woman. Her name is Lana Marks. Do you want to know who Lana Marks is? She was appointed by Trump. She has zero experience as a diplomat. You know why? Because she don't need it to become the ambassador. She bought her ambassadorship. Marks was CEO and designer of Lana Marks, a fashion accessories brand which specializes in exotic leathers and is known for creating some of the world's most expensive handbags. So basically, you're telling me, I mean, look, I can tell you just straight up, there is no way on earth, in any country, that you enter the diplomatic corps and start as an ambassador. That is impossible. This is unheard of. She bought her ambassadorship. And it says over here that she's also a friend of Trump's and Mar-a-Lago, right? So take a look at this. Marks had known Trump for more than 2 decades and was a member of his Mar-a-Lago club. So they're telling you here, last year, that Iran wanted to kidnap and assassinate the U.S. ambassador to South Africa, who is a fucking handbag designer, and that this handbag designer is equal to General Soleimani. What a load of nonsense. Who believes this crap? Like, they're not even trying. You're equating one of the most important men in the Middle East to a fucking handbag designer who bought her job as an ambassador from Donald Trump. Who believes this crap? Look, it was also in the Jerusalem Post. Of course it was, right? It was in all of the papers. And then what do we have here? Oh, South Africa says insufficient evidence of Iranian plot to assassinate U.S. ambassador. Oh, you don't say. You don't say. And do you remember when they also said, oh, look, the Iranians, they're putting bounties on American troops, and just like the Russians are, allegedly, and they had Chinese bounties as well. And I told you there would be chocolate bounties and Syrian bounties. That was also nonsense. There was no evidence for that. Absolutely no evidence. Remember this? U.S. intelligence memo admits there is no evidence of Russian payment of bounties to Afghans for killing U.S. soldiers. Same for the Iranians. No evidence. So if they're making up something absurd like this, that they're going to literally kill a U.S. official who is a handbag designer, you don't think that they would make this crap up as well, the Americans? I'm not saying she necessarily made it up, but it is far-fetched, and it's probably the FBI who made it up. I don't know. I mean, that's just it's a logical conclusion when you see that the United States is constantly making up bogus stories like this. Absolutely absurd stories like this. Here's what Sayyid Mohammed Marendi said, great friend of the show. He said, Iran is so lucky to have these fools leading US and EU regime change operations alongside a host of Shah's princesses, quote-unquote liberation armies, and God knows what else. They make Don Quixote look smart. But those who pay these people taxpayer money make them look brilliant. And look at this. Reuters is mimicking US regime change propaganda. Reuters is mimicking US regime propaganda. It's impressive that Iran can interfere in US elections and plan arrests for agents inside the US. The only problem is US officials are bad at fiction. A 2,000-kilometer speedboat ride from New York to Caracas for a silly goose. The US can do better. They really can do better. Come on. You're not even trying here. This is insulting. But you know who she's friends with? Our little friend over here, Masi. She's friends with Mike Pompeo. He's a real friend of Iran. He does nice things to Iranians. He starves them. He prevents them from importing medical supplies. He cuts them off from the world economy. He targets the oil sector, their banking sector. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He really wants the best for Iranians, right? What a standout guy. I'm just throwing this out there, but if you are standing with Mike Pompeo, I'm trying to be diplomatic as possible. It's a poor choice of company, right? And just like Mohammed Marendi said, Professor Marendi, he mentioned these, Iran is meddling in the US elections. We all know this is bullshit. So the United States has a pattern of making up the most preposterous claims. The CIA guy in Stockwell, he was telling you in the other video what they were doing about Cuba. They make up the most ludicrous accusations and put them in the media. And it's all nonsense. According to unnamed US intelligence officials, apparently, supposedly, it appears as though you're full of shit. The reason that all these networks have brought this woman on, Masih, they brought her on to talk about the story is because it's good for their anti-Iranian propaganda. That's what it's about. Let's demonize Cuba. Let's demonize Iran. Let's demonize Venezuela. Let's demonize Syria. Let's demonize all these countries who happen not to bend the knee to Uncle Sam. What a coincidence, right? And you want to come here and pretend? Did you hear what that guy said on NBC, that Iran has a history of kidnapping dissidents? Really? What do you call what the U.S. is doing to Julian Assange? Julian Assange is a journalist, a real journalist, okay? You may call him a dissident as well, if you will. That doesn't change anything. The United States is trying to kidnap him. He's not American. He's not in the United States. He wasn't there when you published any of the things that they accuse him of publishing as being a crime. They're not crimes. What do you call that? Why are all these networks not talking about that? This is a long campaign. That's a long campaign. There's CIA plotting to discussing at the very least, discussing to potentially poison and kidnap him. They were discussing stealing his baby's diaper. They spied on him in the Ecuadorian embassy. They violated his right to due process. They violated the torture convention. Jesus Christ, I could sit here all night. What do you call that? You think that's a government that respects a free press? You can't come here and tell me, Iran, when the United States, you got 2 administrations in a row pursuing one of the worst indictments in modern history that literally criminalizes journalism. It criminalizes journalism. It's not about one person. It's for the whole field, right? The audacity of these people, right? Mike Pompeo specifically, what did he say? WikiLeaks is a hostile non-state intelligence service. That's what he thinks about journalists, right? That's what the mainstream media think about journalists. They don't cover this. They don't care because they're not journalists. And, they have the stones to talk about rendition. Dude, again, go and read about the torture programs, the rendition programs that the CIA had. The Americans even pressured successfully the Germans and Italians not to prosecute CIA agents who were caught kidnapping and torturing their own fucking citizens. Like these governments won't even stand up for their own citizens because of how much pressure the United States is putting on them and how corrupt they both are. They won't even defend their own citizens. They let Uncle Sam just kidnap their citizens and do what they will. And you want to come here and tell me that these European and American powers are democracies and they don't kidnap and torture and do it to an extent that is absolutely unbelievable. They have entire programs dedicated to this. It's an international goddamn, conglomerate. Are you kidding me? And you want me to come believe this bullshit? They were saying that these 4 guys in the indictment, the Iranians, they're at large. You mean they're in Iran? Like they're at home? Why didn't they arrest them when they were in the US? If they're guilty of a kidnapping plot, or you allege that they're conspiring to kidnap someone. The only woman that they found is apparently laundering $500,000 in California, like as if Iran is just swimming in foreign currency. I don't think people understand countries that are under sanctions like Iran, like Syria, even Lebanon, man. Lebanon is hurting. They don't have foreign currency. They don't have these dollars to just go and swim around in them. They don't have time and energy and resources to go after some journalist in Brooklyn. Can you not? Do people not understand this? The only thing that this does is propaganda. It's just to paint this picture that, oh, look, these countries, they're so barbaric. They're such dictatorial regimes. Oh my God, look at them. They're so uncivilized. They don't respect journalists. Meanwhile, they're screwing Assange. They lock up whistleblowers all the time. They go and kidnap people all over Europe. And then they have the stones to lecture about freedom and democracy. Get the hell out of here, man. Enough. Have some shame. The clowns who are still buying this nonsense and drinking this Kool-Aid. Have some goddamn shame, man.